I'd like to start just by giving a quick introduction about myself. My name is Amy Guttman. I'm an American journalist based in London. My background is hard news, current affairs, and latterly startups and entrepreneurship. I've worked for a lot of the major networks around the world, including ABC Australia, CBS News, PBS News, BBC, Associated Press, Forbes, many others. So now let me introduce our guests here. We have Jon Medved, who is founder and CEO of OurCrowd. And I'm also pleased to introduce Eyal Niv, who is managing partner of Pitango First, and they represent two of the biggest and most active VCs in Israel. So welcome, gentlemen. Let's get right in. We all know how the resilience of this country and startups included in that have been impacted by the events of October 7th. But I want to hone in on specifically how the investment world has been impacted, both in terms of your own activity as well as the investors that you deal with outside of Israel. And if you could each take a turn.
So the war has not been a positive event at all in any part of our lives, and certainly in the business environment. But before you get to the specifics of the war's impact, you have to realize that the war came at a particularly bad time in the business cycle, especially for venture capital. Because what we've experienced over the last couple of years is a global downturn in the investment in venture capital-backed companies. So if you take the peak of 2021 and you look at last year's numbers, 2023, you see a 70% reduction in the amount of money invested. And this is not just Israel, this is globally. So Israel went from 26 billion in 2021 to 6.9 billion in 2023, which in any business is a tough thing. When you start with that and then add the war on top of it, you've got trouble. And you can look at all kinds of aspects, such as people in reserves and negative attitudes outside of Israel. But the good news is there seems to be a little bit of a Dickensian, as in Charles Dickens, environment, where it's a tale of two tech cities. On the one hand, there are the strong Israeli companies. And the strong Israeli companies are not just plowing through the fog of battle and the troubles in the global environment. Many of them are prospering. You see companies like Wiz do the largest single fundraising in Israeli history in the middle of the war. $1 billion raised, up at a 10 billion kind of valuation. You see people acquiring companies for billions of dollars. You see our companies being acquired. And in fact, what's so interesting is the recent data about 2024 shows that there's over already 4 billion invested in the first 5 months, and we're probably on track for doing a $10 billion year, which will represent almost a 50% increase, which you're not seeing a similar increase going on globally. So it's a really confusing environment, not easy to make simple, clear-cut pronouncements, but just face it, Israel is resilient. The sky is not falling. Our tech economy is continuing to chug ahead. The guys who are suffering, however, are the early stage companies who are really just starting or looking for their Series A. And that's why they're experts on this panel, like Eyal Niv, to talk about that.
So thank you for that. It's a good segue. I would say in terms of early stage investments, first of all, I mean, the war itself was put all of us in a very difficult situation as human beings. Nobody can go on and do what they do, especially when you have to think long term and you have to think positive to make these early stage investments. So certainly the first few months we were held a stop. I mean, we were really confused about everything and what will be the length of the war and this and that. But I must say that, I mean, I'm very much connecting to what Jon have just said. Everything is bouncing back, and we are here at Cyber Week. But certainly, I think if you look at they say the last 14 exits in cyber, 13 of them happened here in Israel, which is, if you think about it, it's amazing. During a war, people are buying companies for the long term here in Israel, which is amazing. I think that around 50% of every cent that goes into cyber is attracted to Israel, which is also amazing. I mean, we're such a tiny country. So in essence, you know, it's been a harsh impact. I think in the long term, if things don't change quickly, we're going to feel the impact over the next year or two. I mean, we're very lucky that we have so many funds looking at Israel and being positive about Israel. It gives us some delay in the impact that we feel, but we can only sustain for so long. We have new funds and everything, but things have to go back to normal.
I want to get to the new funds in just a little bit, but first of all, it obviously isn't business as usual, even though the numbers you both cite are truly compelling. So how have each of you changed your own behavior since the events of October 7th? Are you investing about the same? Are you investing less in fewer companies?
So we have a unique model at OurCrowd where we're not just investing from a single fund that we raise or two funds every 3 or 4 years. We raise every day. Okay, we have to go and find great companies. We negotiate term sheets, which we either lead or we follow others. And then we go out to our community of today. It's 250,000 investors worldwide from 195 countries. And we're managing $2.5 billion of their assets. So we have to go out and explain to them, we got this great investment idea, join us. We're putting our own money in, here are the terms, it makes sense. And we would like to raise as much as we could in this environment. At the moment, we're holding our ground, meaning that we're about flat year to year from last year. Last year was a little bit down from 2022, which was, again, with the market. But my slogan with my team is, hey, in this environment, flat is the new up. Okay, if we're able to hold our ground despite a global downturn and despite the war, that's just good enough for us. And obviously, got to cut costs, both in-house as well as the companies. You have to make sure that you're not spending money that you don't have, okay? And you have to look for the cyclical change because, you know, it happens. I've been through now a number of cycles. And you've got to realize that it never goes straight up to the right, okay? And it's not everything together. There are cycles. And so you have to be aware of them, that even, for example, in a down cycle, there are these huge meteors like NVIDIA that, you know, go up like insanity. Okay, not insanity, it's totally justified. But the bottom line is that it's a complicated environment where there are very, very good news in the general market, difficult news in other parts, and we are just doing as well as we can, and I think we're holding our own.
Eyal?
So I think, you know, I touched it in my previous answer that we have gone back to making investments at the same pace. I must say that we don't raise money for every investment, but we do have to raise new funds. And I must say that I'm so thankful and surprised at the solidarity and support that we have seen from LPs from all around the world, which is amazing. I think it's nothing that we could really foresee, and that's been very, very strong. Had a very strong impact because, you know, when we have the money to invest, we know who to look for, and I mean this institute has been a great one for us to find new opportunities, especially in cyber. So I would say in terms of areas of interest, cyber is certainly an area that we believe for the long term will continue to grow. The threats around the world are just growing. public opinion engineering has been a weapon in the hands of governments, and I think that everybody has to protect themselves in one way or another. Generative AI continues to be a huge area of interest. We've been investing in generative AI since 2016 with companies like GraphCore and AI21 and Iguazio and others, and we have a lot more. DID, for example, which is doing very well.
Okay, so let's save the sales pitch for the end.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that generative AI is we're just beginning. So, and the combination, by the way, is also amazing. Generative AI for cyber and cyber for generative AI. So many combinations, so much to do. And I think we are very, very excited about what's going to come in the tech world with quantum, with AI, with cyber, so many opportunities. So we're back to our normal investment pace with 2 new funds, which is amazing.
I know each of you have set about launching new funds with each of your companies in a very thoughtful way since October 7th, in a more philanthropic way. Tell us about those.
When the war broke out, we immediately realized there was going to be a problem, especially with the early stage companies, that they needed someone to come in and to say, we're going to lead rounds, especially in the seed and the Series A. So we built a resilience fund, which managed in literally a matter of months to announce a fund, raise a fund, and deploy it in 46 companies, 23 that were already our own portfolio and 23 outside. It wasn't a great amount of money. It was about $15 million, but we put it all to work. We raised the money without taking any management fee or any carried interest. So we did it essentially pro bono. And what I'm very proud of is that this leveraged about 10 times the total amount of money, meaning that if we put $500,000 into a company, we were the leaders or part of a $5 million round, which I think was important. And there are other groups who are doing that. That deserves some applause. There are other groups who are doing it, like Iron Nation and Safe Dome and others, and they all deserve applause, and it's important, but it's not sufficient, okay? And we have not scratched the surface, in my opinion, in terms of mobilizing the resources among both the Jewish people and the broader Friends of Israel and our partners, who many of them want to stand up and support Israel, but there haven't been those frameworks outside of charitable stuff, which is really important. But right now, people want to invest in Israel. And if you're just an average person sitting in Los Angeles or in London or even in Hong Kong, and you say, hey, how do I invest in Israel? Because I think it's going to be a great opportunity, whether it's in cyber or AI or quantum or whatnot. It's not so easy. They can go to OurCrowd, but there should be dozens of opportunities like OurCrowd. And there should be ways that we as an ecosystem can not just get literally millions of investors interested in the country, but also bring the billionaires to Israel. People like Bill Ackman, who stood up and bought 5% of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, made a great trade, a great investment. We need more of that so that we can continue to grow.
Yeah.
So in terms of resiliency and the Resilience Fund, we also did something called Iron Nation, which has supported many, many startups and basically bypasses the whole infrastructure and connects people from all around the world directly to startups in Israel. And that has been amazing. And I think there are more than 15 companies that got seed funding or follow-on funding, which is really great. And kudos to everybody that are part of this. We are just one part of this fund. On the other hand, we also did something that's more on the philanthropic side, a fund called the ICF, which is the Israeli Children Fund for kids. And we know so many of these kids. There are more than 400 kids that actually lost their parents in this terrible terror attack. And we are going to use the power of high tech, the power of cyber, and the business community here in Israel in order to make sure they get the best support and the best springboard for life as if their parents were here. So I welcome everybody. We have a wonderful website, and we are raising a lot of money for these kids, and we need a lot more. Certainly raising most of the money from outside of Israel, but I will say that I feel the high-tech industry in Israel can take full responsibility for these kids, and we don't need to let them feel like they've lost their parents. So thank you, everybody.
Very encouraging from you both. Thank you. I want to flip it. We have a few more minutes. I don't want to dwell on the negative, but it's impossible to ignore, especially with all the news that we see coming from around the world, minute by minute. Jon, you referenced it a bit earlier. What about all the negative sentiment that we hear about and those of us in the diaspora can feel? What kind of impact has that had on the institutional investing world?
So far, not much, but it's something that we have to be completely aware of, monitor, and counter, because it's a huge strategic danger to the country. If Israel's brand becomes that of a genocidal, predatory, apartheid nation, that's not a good brand for business, especially the high-tech business, which is by nature future thinking, supposed to be progressive and inclusive. And there's just no way you can spin this properly. So far, the big companies, all the multinationals who've been here, the Microsofts and the Facebooks and the Googles and the Amazons and the NVIDIAs, okay, have stood incredibly strong with Israel. And any attempts inside or outside those corporations to somehow weaken their position or commitment here has been met with a very, very impressive response from the management of these companies. And I think they deserve applause for that. I mean, that's an unbelievable move on the part of these companies. On the other hand, we, in the high-tech world, can't sit on the sidelines and watch university researchers abandon Israeli research. There is a huge problem going on now with academics publishing and being kicked out of consortia. And we have to take steps to make it where people want Israelis, because there's going to be more funding, because there's going to be great research in science. You know, we're not really very good at long-term planning and strategic thinking as a society. You know, the joke is an Israeli long-term plan is like next week until Thursday. But the reality is that we better get thinking about this, because there is danger here. And it's long-term and it's systemic, and we have to figure out how to regain the advantage in the narrative and how to continue to build our brand as a country, as an industry, which helps and supports our business.
Eyal, brief comments, because I want to give you
I would say, you know, we are living in a very global ecosystem. We are part of the global ecosystem as the high-tech industry. We don't even sell into Israeli companies. We have to make sure that our brand is back where it was. We cannot sustain this for a long time. And it's not for us to take any blame for what has happened in any way, I believe. You know, I served in the army, and I've done my bit in special ops and everything. But at the same time, we have to look around, make sure that this war is over and that we are back to where we were the day before.
Okay, in our last 40 seconds, let's do a quick lightning round question for each of you. This is your moment. If you can each tell me the top 2 companies in your portfolios that you think are really going to blow through the roof.
Well, when you ask me to choose among the 450 companies that we've invested in directly, it's like choosing among a very large family. But number 1, we have a company called Halo, which is making semiconductor accelerator chips for the edge, which is going to be a huge business. The company just has raised over $300 million so far. It's valued over $1 billion, and I think you'll hear a lot about it. The second one I love is a company called Blue Green Water Technology, who are essentially cleaning up the plague of toxic algal bloom, the green scum you see on waterways around the world. Turns out that makes the water bad, but it also emits methane, and it's responsible for 10% of global greenhouse gases. So if you can clean up water and clean up the atmosphere, it's a great company. So look for Halo and look for blue-green water.
Eyal?
Amazing. So I would say, we have two companies that are gearing up for a big outcome. That's everybody know. I think most people would know them. It's Apps Flyer, which is doing amazingly, and Via Transportation. Both companies are doing fantastically well, and hopefully everybody will be part of this. So I don't have to tell you about them, but I think it takes time. It takes a long time to build these IPO-able companies, and I think we've now reached it.
Okay.
With these
Gentlemen, thank you both, and thank you for your very positive initiatives.
A pleasure. Thank you.